The dying alpha didn't beg. That's what stopped her. Luna Queen Aria Nightfall had seen men plead for their lives before, seen them grovel and weep and promise anything to escape the blade. But Cale Draven just lay there in the frozen, blood-stained snow, wrapped in glowing chains that shouldn't exist, staring at the stars like he'd made peace with death. "Execute him," General Lysandra Frost commanded, her sword already drawn. "He burned 3 packs, murdered hundreds. The law is clear, Your Majesty." The law was clear, and Aria had built her crown on following it without mercy. But those chains, moon-cursed runes that could only be forged by someone with High Council magic, were overkill for a simple banishment. And his wounds weren't from battle. They were torture marks, deliberate, prolonged. Someone powerful had wanted Cale Draven not just dead, but destroyed. Aria knelt in the snow, ignoring Lysandra's sharp intake of breath, ignoring the voice in her head screaming that this was treason. The scar across her collarbone ached in the cold, the reminder of the night she'd sworn never to depend on a man, never to trust blindly again. But something in Cale's exhausted eyes looked too much like her own reflection. "Let me be your shield now," she whispered. And in that moment, everything changed, because saving a condemned man meant committing treason against her own crown, and she didn't even know why she was doing it. The wind bit through my furs like frozen knives as I rode through the northern borderlands, my breath misting white in the darkness. Behind me, General Lysandra Frost muttered another complaint about queens who refused to rule from the safety of their throne rooms. I ignored her. I'd clawed my way to this crown through blood and betrayal. I wouldn't dishonor those sacrifices by growing soft now. "Your Majesty," one of my scouts called, his voice sharp with alarm. "There's something ahead." My hand went instinctively to the blade at my hip as we approached. The metallic scent of blood hit me first, thick and wrong in the frozen air. Then I saw him, a man, half dead in the snow, wrapped in chains that glowed with an eerie silver light, moon curse runes, the kind that require High Council magic to forge, the kind that shouldn't exist outside the sacred vaults. "It's him." Lysandra's voice was pure venom as she dismounted, her sword already drawn. "Cale Draven." The name sent ice through my veins that had nothing to do with the winter cold. The banished alpha. The monster who'd burned 3 packs, murdered hundreds. The wolf my council had exiled with orders to kill on sight. "Execute him now," Lysandra commanded, "before he—" "Wait." The word left my mouth before my mind caught up. I dismounted slowly, approaching the broken figure in the snow. Up close, I could see the details that didn't fit the legend. His ribs showed through torn flesh, not battle wounds, but starvation. The chains weren't just restraints, they were torture devices, burning moon magic directly into his skin. And his eyes, when they flickered open to meet mine, held no madness, only exhaustion, and shame so deep it looked like he'd been drowning in it for years. "Do it," he rasped, his voice like shattered glass. "I'm too tired to run anymore." He wasn't begging, wasn't pleading for mercy. He'd simply accepted death with the resignation of someone who'd stopped believing he deserved anything else. Something in that acceptance cracked open a place in my chest I'd thought sealed shut forever. My hand moved to the scar across my collarbone, the reminder of the night I'd sworn never to depend on a man, never to trust blindly again. This was insane. He was a convicted murderer. My council would call this treason. But those chains, that magic, and the way he looked at me like he'd already given up on the world ever seeing him but a monster? I knelt in the blood-stained snow and made a decision that would either save or damn us both. "Let me be your shield now," I whispered. Then I turned to my horrified guards and gave an order that shattered every law I'd sworn to uphold. Take him to the palace dungeons. Tell no one. And if any of you breathe a word of this, I'll execute you myself for treason against your queen." As we rode back through the frozen darkness, Kale's unconscious body secured behind Lysandra's furious glare, one thought consumed me. The moon curse chains could only be forged by someone in my own court, which meant the real monster wasn't dying in the snow. He was sitting on my council, waiting. The dungeon air was thick with the metallic tang of suppression magic as I descended the stone steps, medical supplies clutched in hands that shouldn't be trembling. I was a queen. I didn't shake. But I just committed treason, and the weight of it sat like ice in my chest. Kale was chained to the far wall of the cell, barely conscious, his head hanging forward. The suppression runes carved into the floor pulsed with a sickly green light, designed to strip shifters of their connection to their wolves, to render them helpless. "I brought supplies," I said, kneeling beside him. "Your wounds need—" "Why?" His voice was raw gravel. "Why didn't you just let me die?" I unwrapped the bandages without answering, focusing on the deep lacerations across his ribs. Not clean cuts from battle. These were deliberate, methodical. Someone had taken their time hurting him. "Tell me about the massacre," I said quietly. "The 3 packs that burned. They say you—" "I wasn't there," he laughed, bitter and broken. "Doesn't matter. They needed someone to blame, and I was convenient." My hands stilled as I noticed his wrists. The moon curse runes weren't just binding him, they were burned directly into his flesh, still glowing with active magic. I'd seen these markings described in forbidden texts. The procedure didn't just restrain a shifter's wolf, it severed the connection entirely. "You took your wolf," I breathed, horror crawling up my spine. This is torture worse than death. Only someone with high council access could—" "Your trusted advisors." Kale's eyes finally met mine, and they were filled with such hollow rage it stole my breath. "The ones who sit at your right hand, who whisper in your ear about justice and order. They did this." The implications crashed over me like a frozen wave. If he was telling the truth, then the conspiracy went deeper than I'd imagined. My own council, the wolves I'd fought beside to win this crown. I forced myself to focus, reaching for the bread and water I'd brought. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." That wasn't a request, my voice hardened. I didn't risk everything to watch you starve out of pride. "Then you're a fool." He turned his face away. "I'm a dead man either way." Something in his resignation sparked fury in my chest. I grabbed his jaw, forcing him to look at me. "Listen to me, Kale Draven. I have built my reign on being strong enough to stand alone. I swore I would never depend on anyone, never trust blindly again." My thumb brushed the scar on my collarbone. "But I made a choice in that snow, and I don't make choices I'm not willing to see through." For the first time, something flickered behind his exhaustion. Not hope, he was too broken for that, but maybe curiosity. "Why?" he asked again, quieter this time. "Because your eyes looked like mine," I admitted, "and because those chains shouldn't exist, and because someone powerful wanted you not just dead, but destroyed." I released him, standing. "I'm going to find out who. I'm going to find the truth about what really happened." "Even if it costs you your crown?" I met his gaze steadily. "Even if it destroys me." I was halfway up the stairs when his voice stopped me cold. "Your Majesty, the night of the massacre, I saw something. Someone in council robes. They were leaving the burning packs, and when they saw me—" He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "They smiled, like they'd been waiting for a witness to frame." My blood turned to ice. Who was it? I never saw their face, but I'd recognize that walk anywhere. And I've seen them in your throne room recently. The monster wasn't just on my council. They were close enough to watch me every day, close enough to strike whenever they wanted. And now They knew I'd saved the one witness who could expose them. High Counselor Morwen Vale's smile never reached his eyes as he addressed the assembled court. Your Majesty, we must commend your dedication to border security. Such hands-on leadership is admirable. The words dripped with false praise, and every wolf in the chamber heard the condescension underneath. I kept my expression neutral, fingers drumming once against the armrest of my throne, the only tell I'd allow. Though one does wonder, Morwen continued smoothly, if a queen's time might be better spent on matters of state rather than routine patrols. We have generals for such tasks. Indeed. Prince Orion, my own brother, leaned forward with a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. Sister, you've seemed distracted lately. Perhaps the weight of the crown is... The weight of the crown is mine to bear. I cut him off sharply, and I'll bear it however I see fit. But I'd noticed Orion supporting Morwen's suggestions. Again. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. Across the chamber, Priestess Ellen of the Moon Temple watched in silence, her ancient eyes seeing too much. The meeting dragged on, trade disputes, territory negotiations, all of it feeling hollow when I knew a viper sat among us. When we finally adjourned, I caught Ellen's sleeve. The Moon Curse runes. Who has access to that magic? Her expression shifted, something like pity crossing her weathered face. Some truths are dangerous, even for queens. I don't care about danger. I need... The prophecy speaks of a Luna who shields a dying wolf. When that day comes, the kingdom will either be reborn or burned. Ice flooded my veins. What does that mean? But Ellen pulled away, shaking her head. Choose carefully, child. The flames are already lit. That night, locked in my private study, I pored over massacre records until my eyes burned. The inconsistencies screamed at me once I knew to look. Cale's alibi placed him 50 miles away when the fires started. Witness testimonies contradicted each other. Evidence logs showed tampering, and every trail led back to wolves with council access. I was so focused on the documents, I didn't hear the door open. Planning to tell me why you're harboring a condemned murderer? Lysandra's voice was cold steel. Or should I just arrest you for treason now? My head snapped up. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, fury radiating from every line of her body. How long have you known? I followed you to the dungeons tonight. Her hand moved to her sword. Your Majesty, I have served you faithfully, fought beside you, bled for this crown, and now I find you protecting the monster who slaughtered innocents? He didn't do it. I stood slowly, carefully. Lysandra, the evidence was fabricated. Someone on the council, is that what he told you? She laughed bitterly. And you believed him? A banished alpha facing execution? I believe the proof I've found. Look at these records. I don't need to look at anything. Her voice cracked like a whip. You're being manipulated, used, and it's going to cost you everything. The accusation stung because part of me feared she was right. I gave you an order regarding that prisoner. You will follow it. And if I refuse, if I go to the council right now and tell them your queen has committed treason? The threat hung between us like a blade. My oldest ally, my most trusted general, and I was losing her. Then you'll force my hand, I said quietly, and neither of us wants that. Lysandra stared at me for a long moment, something breaking behind her eyes. I don't know who you are anymore. She turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the terrible knowledge that I'd just made an enemy of the one wolf I couldn't afford to lose. My hand shook as I returned to the documents, but I froze at a notation I'd missed before, a signature authorizing Cale's banishment, Morwen Vale's signature. Written 2 days before the massacre even happened. They'd planned to frame him from the start. And now that I knew,
I'd just painted a target on my own back.
The hidden chamber beneath the palace was mine alone, a sanctuary carved from stone, where I could train without the weight of courtly eyes. Tonight, I'd brought a condemned alpha who could barely stand. "On your feet," I ordered, tossing Kale a practice sword. He caught it clumsily, his movements sluggish without his wolf's enhanced strength. "I don't need your pity, Your Majesty." "This isn't pity," I circled him, assessing. "This is strategy. If you're innocent, I need you strong enough to prove it. Right now, you're useless." His jaw clenched, pride flaring in his eyes despite exhaustion. "Then perhaps you should have left me in the snow." I struck without warning, a testing blow he barely blocked. "Perhaps, but I didn't. So stop wasting my time with self-pity and fight." What followed was brutal. Kale pushed himself with the desperation of a man who'd forgotten how to be weak, driving his merely human body past every reasonable limit. When he stumbled, he forced himself up. When his hands bled from gripping the sword wrong, he didn't stop. "Enough!" I finally snapped, catching his wrist before he could swing again. "You're going to kill yourself." "Better than being helpless." He wrenched free, breathing hard. "You don't understand what it's like. My wolf was—" His voice cracked. "It was part of me, and they ripped it away like cutting out my soul." The raw anguish in his words hit somewhere deep in my chest. I lowered my sword slowly. He continued, staring at his scarred hands. "I became alpha at 19. Too young, too inexperienced. But I loved my pack, swore I'd protect them." His laugh was broken glass. "Then the fires came, and I wasn't there. I failed them. And when I tried to find out who really did it, they took everything I had left." "Sit," I said quietly, gesturing to the stone bench. For once, he obeyed. I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "You see this?" I traced the scar across my collarbone. "My first mate. I trusted him completely, depended on him, and the night assassins came for my family, he was the one who let them in." Kale's eyes widened slightly. "He betrayed me for a council seat," I continued, the old wound aching. "Nearly killed me. Would have if I hadn't learned that depending on anyone makes you vulnerable." My fingers pressed against the scar. "So I swore I'd never need anyone again. Never trust, never let anyone close enough to destroy me." "Then why am I here?" His voice was barely a whisper. I met his gaze, really met it, and saw my own isolation reflected back. Two leaders who'd built walls so high they'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we're both tired of being alone." Something shifted in the air between us. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition, understanding. "Thank you," Kale said after a long silence, "for not letting me die." I didn't respond, couldn't, because acknowledging what I was feeling meant admitting those walls were cracking. We sat in charged silence until footsteps echoed in the corridor above, sharp, military precise. Lysandra. My blood turned to ice. If she found Kale here, outside the suppression cell, she'd have grounds to arrest us both. "Hiss! Hide!" I hissed, shoving him toward the shadows. "Don't move, don't breathe." The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by voices, Lysandra's, and Morwen's. "I'm sure she's hiding something, High Counselor. I've served her for years, and she's never been this secretive." "Trust your instincts, General. Perhaps it's time we discussed what happens when a queen becomes unstable." I pressed against the wall, heart hammering, as their shadows passed directly above our heads. They were planning something, and Lysandra, my most loyal general, was helping them. The Moon Temple was cold as a tomb when I arrived at midnight, answering Priestess Ellen's urgent summons. She waited in the inner sanctum, surrounded by candles that cast dancing shadows across ancient stone. You need to hear the full prophecy, she said without preamble, before it's too late. My pulse quickened. Tell me. Her voice took on the resonant quality of sacred recitation. When the Luna shields the dying wolf, ancient bonds will break or bind. If trust fails, the kingdom burns. If trust prevails, a new era rises. But beware, the wolf who returns without his beast may become the beast entire. Ice flooded my veins. What does that mean? Kale's wolf isn't destroyed, Ellen explained, her ancient eyes grave. It's bound, severed but not gone, and when that curse breaks, and it will break, 7 years of rage and pain will return with it. She gripped my shoulders. Without an anchor, without trust and emotional connection, he won't just lose control, he'll become a mindless killing machine. Everyone in the palace will die. The weight of it crushed down on me. You're saying You have to help him heal, truly heal, not just physically, but here. She pressed a hand over my heart. Or the prophecy's fire will consume us all. I left the temple with my mind reeling, but there was no time to process. Back in my study, I'd finally found what I'd been searching for, hidden documents buried in council archives. Morwyn's correspondence, detailed plans for the massacre, names of rival pack leaders he'd targeted, and a single line that made my blood run cold. The witness must be eliminated. Frame Draven, he's expendable and well-positioned. Kale hadn't just stumbled onto the crime. He'd been specifically chosen to take the fall. I was gathering the documents when my door opened without warning. Orion stood there, his boyish face twisted with something ugly. "Sister," he closed the door behind him, "we need to talk about your pet project in the dungeons." My hand moved subtly toward the dagger at my hip. "I don't know what you mean." "Please," he laughed, bitter and sharp. "I've known for days. Morwen knows too. We've just been waiting to see how far you'd go." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "You're working with him." "He's offering me the throne." Orion moved closer, and I saw the hunger in his eyes, the resentment he'd always hidden behind his smile. "Father always chose you. The council always chose you. But Morwen sees my potential." "He's using you, Orion. He orchestrated a massacre, murdered hundreds, and you're helping him?" "I'm helping myself." His expression hardened. "You're being foolish, sister, risking everything for a condemned criminal. Morwen gave you a chance to do this quietly, execute Draven, maintain your crown, but you just couldn't let it go." "Because he's innocent." "Does it matter?" Orion shrugged. "Don't make me choose between family and power, Arya, because we both know which one I'll pick." The threat was clear. My own brother would help destroy me. "Get out," I said quietly, dangerously. He paused at the door, almost looking regretful. "You have until the council meeting tomorrow. Execute the banished alpha, denounce your investigation as temporary madness, and maybe, they'll let you keep the crown." Your eyes met mine. "Or don't, and watch everything you built burn." The door closed, leaving me alone with documents that could save Kale and a brother who just declared war. I had less than 12 hours to decide: save an innocent man and lose my throne, or sacrifice him to keep my power. And somewhere in the dungeons below, a severed wolf waited to wake. If I made the wrong choice, the prophecy promised fire. But the right choice meant trusting a broken alpha with everyone's lives. My hand trembled as I reached for the documents, because I just realized the terrible truth. The only way to save the kingdom was to completely trust a man I barely knew,
and trust was the one thing I'd sworn never to give again.
The council meeting was a bloodbath. Your Majesty, Lysandra stood, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. For weeks, palace resources have been diverted, guards reassigned, supplies missing, and you refuse to explain why. Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt the walls closing in. The Queen's personal affairs are not subject to council review, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. They are when those affairs compromise our security. Morwen rose smoothly, his expression dripping false concern. Your Majesty, we're worried about you. You've seemed distracted, unstable even. The word hung in the air like poison. I am perfectly stable, I snapped. Then prove it. Lysandra's eyes were hard. Tell us what you're hiding. I couldn't, and we all knew it. The meeting dissolved into chaos, voices rising, accusations flying. When I finally escaped to my chambers, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely remove my crown. I was losing control, losing allies, losing everything I'd fought for. And there was only one person who might understand. The dungeon was dark when I descended, my armor finally cracking under the weight of it all. Cale looked up as I entered, his expression shifting to concern when he saw my face. What happened? I'm failing. The words broke free like a dam bursting. They're turning on me. Lysandra, the council, even my own brother. And my voice cracked. I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight them all. I sank against the wall, and for the first time since taking the crown, I let someone see me break. Protecting you might cost me everything. My throne, my allies, maybe my life. And I don't even know why I'm doing this. Why I can't just... Hey. Cale's voice was soft. Slowly, carefully, he reached through the chains and found my hand. His touch was warm despite the cold iron binding him. You're the strongest wolf I've ever met. I laughed bitterly. I'm falling apart. No, you're breaking and still fighting anyway. That's real strength. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. The kind that doesn't come from never feeling afraid. It comes from being terrified and choosing to stand anyway. Something in his words cracked me open further, and suddenly I was talking, telling him everything. About the loneliness of the crown, about how my vow to never depend on anyone had left me so isolated I'd forgotten what connection felt like. I'm so tired, I admitted, tired of carrying everything alone. But I don't know how to trust anymore, don't know how to let anyone in without waiting for the knife in my back. Cale was quiet for a long moment. Then, I nearly died in that snow because I was too proud to ask for help, too convinced I deserved suffering. His grip on my hand tightened. You taught me that accepting help isn't weakness. Maybe it's time you learn that too. We talked through the night, two broken souls finally letting down walls built from years of pain. He told me about the nightmares that plagued him, the phantom sensation of his wolf trying to claw free. I confessed how exhausting it was to be strong every moment, to never show vulnerability. I don't know how to do this, I whispered as dawn approached. How to trust you, how to fight for you when it might destroy everything. Then don't trust me all at once, he squeezed my hand. Just trust me today. Tomorrow, we'll figure out tomorrow. Something fundamental shifted between us in that darkness. When I brought him food later that day, he accepted it without protest. When screams woke me that night, his nightmares tearing through the dungeon's silence, I went to him without hesitation and stayed until he slept. We weren't queen and prisoner anymore. We were two people learning what it meant to not be alone. I was leaving his cell 3 nights later when he caught my wrist, pulling me back. His eyes met mine, and I saw something raw there, something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Aria, he said, my name, not my title. I need to tell you something about the curse. My heart stopped. What about it? I can feel it weakening. My wolf, it's getting closer to the surface. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. And when it breaks free, if I don't have an anchor, if there's not enough trust between us, he swallowed hard, I'll kill everyone, including you. The confession hung between us like a blade. How long? I asked.
Days, maybe hours, I don't know. His grip on my wrist trembled. You need to execute me, before it's too late, before I become the monster they always said I was. No. Arya! I said no. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. We'll find another way. There is no other way. The only thing that can anchor a returning wolf is a complete bond, a mate bond. His eyes were wild with fear. And that takes time we don't have. The dungeon door above us crashed open. Lysandra, voice echoed down the stairs. Your Majesty, you need to come now. Morwen's called an emergency session. He's moving to depose you. Time was up, and Kale's wolf was waking.
The council chamber erupted in chaos as Morwen unveiled his evidence. Fabricated documents, falsified testimony, all carefully constructed to paint me as a traitor. The Queen has been harboring Kyle Draven, Morwen announced, his voice ringing with false righteousness. The banished alpha, the murderer of innocents. She's hidden him in our dungeons, used palace resources to sustain him, all while lying to this council. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even wolves loyal to me looked shocked. These are lies, I said, standing, but my voice lacked conviction. Because they weren't lies. Not entirely. Are they? Prince Orion rose, and the betrayal cut fresh and deep. Sister, I've seen you sneaking to the dungeons. We all have. Why don't you tell the council what you've been doing there? The trap was perfect. Deny it, and they'd call me a liar. Admit it, and I'd be confessing to treason. I call for a vote of no confidence, Morwen declared. The Queen has 48 hours to answer these charges, or she will be stripped of her crown and executed for treason alongside her co-conspirator. Seconded, Orion said immediately. The council dissolved into shouting. I saw the division clearly, half demanding my head, half uncertain. Not enough support to save me. I was losing. When the session adjourned, Lysandra caught my arm in the corridor. Is it true? I met her eyes. Yes. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, anger, but also conflict. I should arrest you right now. Then why haven't you? Because I've fought beside you for 7 years. Because I've seen you bleed for this kingdom. Her jaw clenched. And because Morwen's a snake, and I won't help him steal a throne. She leaned closer. But that doesn't mean I forgive you for lying to me. You have 48 hours. Use them wisely. She walked away, leaving me alone with the wreckage of everything I'd built. I found Orion in the portrait gallery, staring at our father's painting. It didn't have to be this way, I said quietly. He didn't turn. You made your choice when you chose him over your crown. I chose justice over politics. There's a difference. Is there? Finally, he looked at me, and his eyes were cold. You were always father's favorite, Arya. The perfect daughter, the strong one. I was just the spare. His voice turned bitter. But you're weak now. Weak because of that broken alpha you're protecting. And weakness has no place on a throne. The words hit like physical blows because they echoed every fear I'd carried for weeks. Orion, please. Morwen's offering me everything I deserve. Power, recognition, a legacy that isn't living in your shadow. He stepped closer, and I saw the boy I'd grown up with buried beneath ambition's poison. Don't make me destroy you, sister. Just execute Draven. Save yourself. I can't. Then you've already lost. He left me standing there, alone among portraits of dead kings, knowing my own brother would watch me burn. I found Priestess Ellen in the temple, praying. I need to bring Kyle before the council, present the evidence of his innocence publicly. It's the only way to stop Morwen. Ellen's face went pale. No, the stress, the exposure, it could trigger his wolf's return prematurely, and without a complete bond to anchor him, she gripped my shoulders. Arya,
He'll massacre everyone in that chamber. Then what do I do? My voice cracked. Let Morwen win? Watch him execute an innocent man and steal my throne? I don't know, she whispered. The prophecy speaks of fire either way, trust and rebirth, or failure and burning. You must choose which flames to walk through. I descended to the dungeons that night, my decision made. Kyle looked up as I entered, and his expression shifted to alarm. What happened? Morwen's moving against me. I have 48 hours. I knelt beside him, taking his hands. I need to bring you before the council. Prove your innocence publicly. It's the only way. Arya, no. My wolf. I can barely control it now. That much stress, that many hostile wolves. He pulled away, chains rattling. I'll lose control. I'll kill everyone, including you. Then we make sure you have an anchor. My heart hammered as I said it. The mate bond. It's the only thing strong enough. His eyes widened. That takes time, intimacy, trust built over... We don't have time. I cupped his face. But we have this. Whatever's growing between us. Maybe it's not the traditional bond, but it's real. I feel it every time I'm near you. You're gambling everything on a maybe. I'm gambling everything on you. I pressed my forehead to his. Because in 48 hours, either we both burn or we save each other. Those are the only options left. Kyle's breathing was ragged. If this fails, it won't. How can you be sure? Because I trust you. The words came easier than I expected. For the first time in 7 years, I'm choosing to trust someone completely, and I'm betting my life that you won't let me down. He kissed me then, desperate and claiming and terrified all at once. When we broke apart, his eyes had shifted, no longer fully human. His wolf was surfacing, and we had less than 2 days to forge a bond strong enough to contain 7 years of rage, or watch the prophecy's flames consume us all.
The throne room had never held so many wolves. Every seat filled, guards lining the walls, nobles packed shoulder to shoulder. They'd come to watch their queen fall. I stood before them all, Kale beside me in chains, and felt the weight of every hostile stare. "You've heard the charges," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs, "that I've harbored a criminal, conspired against the kingdom. But what you haven't heard is the truth." I produced the documents, Morwen's correspondence, the fabricated evidence, witness payments. I laid it all bare, piece by damning piece. Kale Draven was 50 miles away when the fire started. Every witness against him was paid. The evidence was planted. I turned to Morwen, who sat perfectly calm, and the orders came from High Counselor Morwen Vale, who orchestrated the massacre to eliminate rival pacts and consolidate his own power. The room exploded into chaos. "Lies!" Morwen stood, his face a mask of righteous fury. "The desperate fabrications of a queen who's lost her mind over a condemned criminal." "Then explain this." I held up the final document, his signature authorizing Kale's banishment, dated 2 days before the massacre. "You planned to frame him from the beginning." Morwen's expression flickered, just for a moment, but everyone saw it. "Your Majesty," Orion interjected, his voice strained, "even if this is true, the law is clear. Harboring a banished wolf is treason. You've admitted your guilt." "I've admitted to saving an innocent man from corruption in my own council," my voice rang out, "and I'd do it again." That's when Morwen smiled, cold and terrible. "Then let's see how innocent he truly is." He raised his hand, and I saw the moon rune carved in his palm, the activation sigil for Kale's curse. "No!" I screamed, but it was too late. Morwen's lash lashed out, and Kale's scream tore through the throne room. His body convulsed, chains shattering. A 7 years of bound wolf tore free in an explosion of raw power. The curse was breaking.
Wolves scrambled back as Kale's eyes went pure black, his bones cracking and reshaping. The wolf that had been severed, tortured, locked away for 7 years was returning, and it was full of rage. "He'll kill us all!" someone shrieked. Guards drew weapons, nobles fled for the exits. The prophecy was coming true, and we were all about to burn. But I didn't run. I stepped directly in front of Kale as his wolf surfaced, as his humanity drowned beneath years of pain and fury. His claws extended, jaw elongating, every muscle coiling to strike. "Kale!" I commanded, my voice cutting through his transformation. "Look at me." Those black eyes locked on mine, feral and wild. "I'm here," I said, stepping closer even as guards shouted warnings. "I'm your shield, remember? You don't have to face this alone." His wolf snarled, trembling with the need to attack, to destroy, to make everyone pay for what they'd done. But I kept talking, kept moving closer, trusting everything to the bond we'd built in darkness. "I see you," I whispered, close enough now to touch. "Not the monster they made you, not the broken alpha or the condemned criminal. I see you, Kale, and I'm not afraid." My hand reached out, slowly, deliberately, touched his transformed face. And something shifted. The black in his eyes flickered. Recognition sparked through the rage. His wolf, the beast that should have been mindless, unstoppable, suddenly understood. This was the Luna who'd knelt in snow to save him, who'd risked everything to protect him, who'd chosen trust when every instinct screamed to run. The bond snapped into place like lightning, and Kale's massive wolf form dropped to its knees before me. Submitting, recognizing his Luna. The throne room went silent. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not through burning, but through trust, through a bond forged in darkness and sealed in the most public moment imaginable. Kale shifted back to human form, gasping, whole for the first time in 7 years. His wolf had returned, not as a weapon, but part of him again. "Arrest them," I said quietly, gesturing to Morwen and Orion. Guards moved immediately. Morwen struggled, screaming about injustice, but no one listened. Orion just stared at me, something like regret finally crossing his face. "You were right," he whispered as they led him away. "I chose power, and it cost me everything." The council members who'd supported Morwen were already backtracking, swearing loyalty. Those who doubted me were kneeling. I'd won. But as I helped Kale to his feet, his hand finding mine, I felt something else. The mate bond, newly formed and fragile, thrumming between us. And through it, I felt his wolf's hunger, its need. 7 years of isolation demanding to claim, to mark, to complete the bond in the most primal way imaginable. His eyes met mine, still partially shifted, and I saw the warning there. "Arya," he rasped, "my wolf won't be satisfied with submission. The bond isn't complete, not yet." Heat flooded through me as I understood. The wolf had accepted me as Luna, but to truly anchor him, to prevent future loss of control, we needed to complete the mate bond. Fully. Intimately. Tonight. "Then we finish this," I whispered. His grip on my hand tightened almost painfully. "Are you sure? Because once we do, there's no going back. You'll be bound to me forever." I looked at the man who'd taught me to trust again, who'd shown me that strength included vulnerability. "I've been sure since I found you dying in the snow." But as we left the throne room together, Lysandra caught my arm one last time. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, "Morwen has been arrested, but he's not talking, and there is signs." She hesitated. "Signs he wasn't working alone. Someone else funded the massacre. Someone with even more power." My blood ran cold. Who? "We don't know yet, but whoever they are, they're still out there. And now that Morwen's failed," her eyes were grave, "they'll come for you directly." The victory suddenly felt hollow. We'd won the battle, Saved Kale, exposed the conspiracy, but the real enemy, the one pulling Morwen's strings, was still hidden, and they knew we were coming.
The council chamber looked different, with half its seats empty. I'd spent 3 days purging the rot, removing every wolf who'd supported Morwen's conspiracy, restructuring power to prevent future coups. The kingdom was healing, but slowly, painfully. The hardest decisions stood before me now. Prince Orion Nightfall, I said formally, looking at my brother in chains. You conspired against the crown, supported a murderer, and betrayed your own blood. The penalty is death. He didn't flinch, just met my eyes with that familiar defiance. But, I continued, my voice softening despite myself, you're still my brother. And I remember the boy who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, who taught me to climb trees, who once told me he'd always protect me. Orion's jaw clenched, something flickering across his face. So, I'm offering exile instead. Leave the Silvercrest Dominion. Never return. Live with the knowledge of what you chose. I leaned forward. Maybe someday you'll understand what you threw away. Mercy, he said bitterly, from the sister I tried to destroy. Not mercy. A chance. I nodded to the guards. Take him to the border. As they led him away, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, he whispered, so quiet I almost missed it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the ache of severed family bonds. Later, in the training courtyard, General Lysandra found me. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, scarred and proud, until finally she dropped to one knee. I doubted you, my queen, she said, her voice rough, questioned your judgment, nearly helped your enemies because I couldn't see past my own anger. Her head bowed. I was wrong. You're stronger than I ever understood, stronger than I am. I helped her to her feet. You refused to support a coup even when you doubted me. That's the kind of loyalty that builds kingdoms, Lysandra. I should have trusted you from the start. You're trusting me now. That's what matters. I gripped her shoulder. I need you beside me. Not as someone who agrees with everything, but as someone brave enough to question me when I'm wrong and stand with me when I'm right. She nodded, and something in her expression shifted. Respect. Real respect. The bond ceremony was held 3 days later under a full moon. Not in the throne room with its political weight, but in the gardens where moonlight could witness what power never could, 2 broken souls choosing each other. The entire kingdom had gathered, pack members, nobles, commonwealths, all watching as Kale stood before me, whole for the first time in 7 years. His wolf had fully integrated, no longer a separate beast, but part of him again. I was dying when you found me, not just in body, but in spirit. I'd given up on everything, on justice, on redemption, on myself. His hands found mine. You saved me, not because you pitied weakness, but because you saw strength I'd forgotten I had. You were my shield when I had nothing left. His thumb brushed across my scarred collarbone. Now, I'll be yours. My throat tightened with emotion. I spent 7 years believing that needing someone made me weak, that trust was a weapon people used to destroy you. I looked at our joined hands. You taught me the truth, that the strongest thing I've ever done was choosing to trust you, to protect you, even when it cost me everything. I met his eyes, letting everyone see the truth I'd hidden for so long. We don't make each other weak, Kale. We make each other whole. The bond sealed as we kissed. Not the desperate claiming of the throne room, but something deeper. A choice made freely, witnessed by wolves who'd learned that their queen's strength included the courage to be vulnerable. When we finally broke apart, the crowd erupted in howls that echoed across the territories. Later, we stood together on the palace balcony, addressing our kingdom for the first time as true partners. The old ways taught us that strength meant standing alone, I called out, that vulnerability was weakness, that trust made you a target. I felt Kale's presence solid beside me. But a wolf who came back from the dead and a queen who risked everything to save him have proven something different. My hand moved to the scar on my collarbone, no longer hidden, no longer a source of shame. This scar used to remind me of betrayal. Now it reminds me of survival, of choosing to trust again despite every reason not to. I looked at Kale. The prophecy said when the Luna shielded the dying wolf, the kingdom would either burn or be reborn. We chose rebirth, Kale added, his voice strong, through trust, through vulnerability, through the courage to protect each other even when it seemed impossible. The crowd roared approval, and I felt it, the shift in the kingdom's energy, a new era beginning. But as the celebration continued below, Lysandra appeared at my shoulder, her expression grim. "Your Majesty, we've identified Morwen's benefactor, the one who funded the massacre." My blood chilled. Who? She handed me a document, and my heart stopped. The signature was unmistakable. Someone I'd trusted completely, someone who'd stood beside me through everything. "It can't be," I whispered. "The evidence is irrefutable." Lysandra's voice was tight. "And they're not in custody. They disappeared 3 hours ago." Kale's hand found mine, squeezing tight. What does this mean? I looked at the crowd celebrating below, at the kingdom we'd just saved, and felt ice flood my veins. It means we didn't win. We just forced our real enemy to reveal themselves. I turned to Lysandra. And now they're coming for us directly. Through our bond, I felt Kale's wolf surface, protective, ready. "Then we face them together," he said. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the document, on the name that changed everything. We'd survived the conspiracy, defeated Morwen, saved the kingdom. But the real war was just beginning. And this time, our enemy knew exactly how to destroy us by targeting the bond we'd just forged. The one thing that made us whole was about to become our greatest vulnerability. The prophecy had promised fire either way. We'd just learned the flames weren't finished with us yet. The end of part 1. To be continued.